The TeraFlex 2.5-inch spacer lift kit for the JT Gladiator provides all the components needed to lift the Gladiator. Lifting the vehicle requires you to install longer shocks, and we recommend you correct the caster with something like TeraFlex drop brackets or Alpine arms. However, we are only showing the components that come with the 2.5-inch spacer lift kit. Begin the installation process by lifting the vehicle off the ground and removing the wheels. Remove the front sway bar links and move the sway bar out of the way. Disconnect the track bar on the axle end. Disconnect the axle actuator plug found on the axle next to the front right control arms. Then detach the wires from the axle and the upper control arms. Disconnect the breather hose, and if you drive a Rubicon, the locker actuator plug. Both of these are found on the axle next to the front left control arms. Support the axle and remove the front shocks. Using locking pliers, open up the bracket holding the brake line to the control arm. Carefully pull the brake line out of the bracket, then remove and discard the bracket. Loosen the hardware on the front control arms. A heat shield covers the front upper control arm. Remove this or just move it out of the way. Raise the vehicle up or lower the axle and remove the front springs. If you are replacing the foam bump stops with the Falcon bump stops, do so at this time. Stack the 1/2-inch spacer, 2-inch spacer, and spring isolator together and set them into the spring bucket. Tabs on top of the spacers align with holes on the spring bucket. Install the top of the factory spring. Insert the 2-inch bump stop strike pad into the spring and then set the bottom of the spring into place. Make sure the upper spring isolator is correctly positioned and that the lower end of the spring aligns with the spring index. Use the provided hardware to attach the bump stop strike pads to the spring mount. Reconnect the axle actuator plug, the breather hose, and the locker actuator plug. Install the new front sway bar links. Install shocks that are appropriate for a 2.5-inch lift. These are the Falcon 3.3 piggyback shocks. Remove the rear factory sway bar links. Detach the brake line bracket from the frame. Disconnect the rear track bar from the axle. Loosen the bolts on the rear control arms. Support the axle and remove the shocks. Lower the axle, Lift the rear spring and set the 1/2-inch spring spacer into place. The rear spacer lifts the rear end to sit level with the front end, removing the front end rake. Install shocks that are appropriate for a 2.5-inch lift. Reattach the brake line bracket, install the new rear sway bar links. Reconnect the rear track bar. Only tighten it after the vehicle is back on the ground. Install the rear bump stop strike pads using the provided hardware. Upper bump stop extensions and additional strike pads are available should you require more bump stop than what is provided. Return the vehicle to the ground and tie in the hardware on the control arms and the track bars.